Hey, hello everyone. What I want to do in this video is I'd like to go over Google Colab, just some of the different things that you can do with Google Colab and how to navigate it as a tool for this course in particular. So anytime you open a Colab notebook, this is technically what it would look like, although this is not an empty Colab notebook. So I will open an empty one, but I'll come back to this one. So when we open a new one, it'll basically look like this. You start off up here with a code box. So it says start coding or generate with AI. This is a Google tool, so Gemini is built into it. So you can use Gemini in order to complete certain functions within Google Colab. And I will go over that later. However, what I first want to go over is just some of the things that you can do here within Colab and how you can run certain things and make certain things work. So, as I just mentioned, to start off, this is a code cell block. So this is the first type of block or cell block that you will find in Google Colab. And this is for accepting Python code. So I did 5 plus 5, I hit play, it'll run, and you'll see the result is 10. However, nobody really knows what 5 plus 5 is doing, and so this is where text blocks kind of come in hand because I can say this code is for showing off Google Colab. And I can exit out of that cell, and you'll see that it just prints into the notebook as a whole, so this code is for showing off Google Colab. You can also put comments inside of cells. So if I come here and I use a hashtag, I can say hashtag or pound or whatever you refer to that as. I am doing arithmetic in this cell. Really, does it matter which one of these that you utilize? Not entirely. It's really more about just making sure that you use one or the other to accurately describe what you're doing throughout your code notebook. And it's really good practice to keep things either commented or you have text above or below the cell, preferably above the cell before you run it, just so that way people know what it is exactly that you are doing. As you can see, another cell block was generated here, and this is another code cell. So another feature with Google Colab is that you can run different blocks of code in these different cells. So this is one individual cell. You see I ran 5 plus 5, but I can also do something else down here. Say hello world, and then press play. And you can see we just get the output hello world. We don't get another output 10. If I change this to 5 plus 3, I haven't rerun anything, so the result of 10 is still there. But 5 plus 3 does not equal 10, so I have to rerun that. So if I say hello class, and I change this to 5 plus 2, I'll show you that these do not run at the same time. 7, and then we have hello class. So anytime you do these different blocks of code, just know that you'll have to run through and press play for each. You can also do code to add new blocks easily below, or text to add new blocks easily below. And then you can delete those blocks. Definitely become familiar with the toolbar up here. So we have file and in file. Every file that you make in Google Colab is going to end up in your Google Drive. So if you don't have a Google Drive or a Gmail account, I recommend making one, just so that way everything that you work on gets saved properly in a place that you can find it later on. Playground mode is essentially just a different user interface that you can interact with. We can turn that back off. We can open up a new notebook, which will give us a new tab in our browser. And of course that notebook will be empty. We can open a notebook, so this is where if we already have another notebook that we want to resume working on, this is where we can do that. We can upload a notebook. So the files that I give you in this course, the .ipynb files, you can utilize those in order to uh, upload them straight to Colab and begin working on them without having to retype everything. If you want to rename your file, you can. So I click rename here. And it's always a good practice to just keep this extension .ipynb on the file name, just so that way it's very clear that this is a IPython notebook. And so I'll call this, I'll just call it just plain around, because that's all I'm doing. What else is in here? So we can make copies of it. So we can save a copy to Google Drive. We can save a copy to GitHub. If you're not familiar with GitHub, this is something that I'll probably talk about later on in the semester. But GitHub is essentially a online repository of different types of code bases. So if you're working on a larger project and you want some place to share your code, either with a large group of people or the world, or even just within your network or company, GitHub is a great place to do that. Save forces a manual save within the Google Colab. So if I hit save, you'll see it saves right now. Just be aware that it does autosave. So as you work on things and you stop typing, it will autosave. But I always recommend manually saving in the event something happens. There's a power outage, your internet connection is severed for some reason. It's a good idea to save. Download is where you can download a Python notebook or a Python file. So you can download one of those two. These are all you'll ever need. And then printing means you can print out your notebook from Google Colab. You would probably never do that. So I don't want to say never. You will probably not do that, at least not for this class, but maybe somewhere else you may have to print out your notebook. Edit is just helping you navigate the development interface. So if you want to select all cells, you can click that to select all cells. You can see there's a shortcut here. Again, I'm on a Mac, so my shortcut is the Command, Control, Shift, and A key. So if I come out, I can select everything with that shortcut. I can cut cells or copy cells. I can paste cells in, so paste code blocks. I can delete a selected cell. I can find and replace. So let's say I named a variable something. Well, I don't have any variables assigned here. So I'll make another code block, and I'll say x equals Professor Nick. And I'll press play, and I'll say find x and replace it with name. And then I'll hit replace, and you'll see that x was replaced with name. So a very quick way of going through the Python notebook, and changing variables that need to be changed without having to go through and painstakingly change each one individually. Notebook settings allows you to tweak the notebook settings there. Table of contents, if you are organizing your notebook based on specific titles or functions or processes throughout your notebook, you can have a table of contents that will quickly take you to a specific place within your notebook. Notebook info will tell you who the owner is, the notebook size, and whether the outputs are private or public, and if code cell execution output will be saved or not. You can start a slideshow, which basically shows off the code. So if I wanted to do a whole lecture on these individual pieces of code, I could do that. And then you can show hide code and show hide output. You can see that after I've run these cells, the output kind of stays here. If I ever want that to go away, I can click here and just click clear selected output, or show hide output. And it has a button here that I now have to press to show the hidden output, which is 7. But I can also just clear that as well, and then I'll have to rerun it, but that's fine. Insert is your typical insert tools. You're inserting code cells, text cells, section header cells. So if I insert code cell, it'll drop a code cell wherever my cursor is. So if I wanted a text cell above, I can just insert a text cell. Obviously, you wouldn't really come up here to insert text when you could just do it from here, but however you prefer, you can do it that way. Runtime, this is a pretty important tool, and it's good to kind of familiarize yourself with some of these shortcuts. Run all will run all of the code that you've written in the notebook. So 7 hello class and name is now run. Run before will run everything before a certain cell. Run the focus cell. So if I highlight a specific cell, let's see, I'll just misspell it. Print hello class. Run the focus cell. Only the cell that I have highlighted will run. Run cell and below will only run the highlighted cell and the cells below it. And then there are some other tools here that are helpful. Interrupt execution. This one is particularly helpful for what we will be doing in this class. A lot of times when you are processing data, one of the important things you have to keep in mind is that you have a certain amount of RAM or disk space. And RAM for Google Colab is probably the most important resource, because if our file is too large and our function is computationally expensive, we're going to quickly use up all of our RAM, and that means the function will probably not complete. A couple of things could happen. One, it could crash, it could time out, and then stop running the code. And the last thing is it could stall and basically just kind of keep running in perpetuity. If that happens, we do want to interrupt execution or restart the session in order to break that stall or lag. And you'll know if your code is doing that because down here, whenever you run something, it'll tell you how long it's been running and how much longer it has to run. Your RAM and disk space you can see over here. So by default, unless you upgrade your account, you will have approximately 12 gigabytes of RAM accessible and available to you, and about 107 gigabytes of disk space. So I would say if your file is going to be larger, and there's some tricks in order to get around this, if your file is larger than 10 gigabytes, you should probably plan to break up that file and process it in smaller chunks, so that way you don't go over that RAM allotment. If you have a personal computer that has more RAM, my computers, for example, have like 24 gigabytes, and then I have a desktop that has 124 gigabytes of RAM. You can basically blunt force that calculation and have it run it, no problem. But in situations like this, it's always a good idea to kind of break the data into chunks, have it processed in smaller partitions of the data set without running the whole thing at once. Tools give you different access to different utilizations and preferences and other things within Google Colab. You probably won't tinker around with a whole lot of this stuff, but settings, you can change the theme, you can change some of the settings with the editor. For AI assistance, you can choose to turn it off if you want, or you can leave it on. You can always upgrade to Colab Pro if you want to shell out some money. You can automatically connect with your GitHub if you want to. And miscellaneous mode allows you to change some of the other settings here. I haven't tinkered around with this, so I'm not entirely familiar with what that does. And then help just lets you get access to documentation regarding Google Colab. So over here on this left hand side, we have table of contents, and this is where you can see we can make sections. And so what we get here is kind of some markdown, and it says new section, so I'll call this the first section. Exciting, the first section. I'll click off, and I think I might have mixed this up. Let me try again. So the first section. First section. And now I can make another section down here, and I'll call this the second section. And so if I click on the second section, it'll take me to the second section, and if I click on the first section, it'll take me to the first section. And this is just helpful for organizing your code for quickly getting around. In this class, you're going to be doing what is known as ETL, extract, transform, and load for a lot of data sets. And so ideally you probably want to organize your notebooks to have an extract section. Let me modify this and have extract. Can have transform. And add another section here. Load. So ETL doesn't have to be in the order that this is in currently. Extract is typically pulling data, so you would technically load your data first, so this would be the first section. And then extracting that data would come next, so this is where you're pulling that data out of whatever format it's in order to manipulate it. And then when you transform it, you are manipulating it further, either to run some type of analysis or changing the nature of that data to suit your purposes. So you can have different sections where you describe how you load in your data, how you extract your data, and then how you transform your data. And you can put all of that, you could put subsections in each, so I can put more text, I can put more code under each section, and it just makes it easy to navigate around your Colab notebooks. Find and replace, we've covered that tool. Code snippets, so these are snippets that you can access to help you do things pretty quickly. Camera captures there, calculate mean and DVI. A lot of these are just kind of built-in things to accelerate your coding, but I don't think you'll use a lot of them. We can say read or load CSV. I don't think they actually have load CSV here, so we're not going to use that. Secrets, this is if you are coding an app or something and you need to access a secret value related to an API. We're not going to do that in this class. It's very unlikely that we will do that. And if you do work on something like that, I really don't recommend using Google Colab for that. I would recommend using some of the other IDEs that I have mentioned to you in other videos and other resources in this course, just because Google Colab is cloud-based and it's a pretty big security risk as is just putting that type of information out there. Typically, if you have a secret key, it means that there's some type of vulnerability associated with access to whatever it is that has a secret key, and you'll either be charged a lot of money if somebody gets a hold of it, or somebody can log into your accounts and compromise your files or some other private information. So I recommend not really using Google Colab for that. I would use a local IDE to kind of keep that from getting into the wrong hands. And then, of course, learning more about how to deploy apps or code that may have secret keys using best practices. And then here's files. And so files are really important because files are a lot of what we're going to be doing in this class. And there's a couple of ways to upload files in Google Colab. The first I just highlighted over. So you can upload to session storage, and this will pull up your files, and you can upload a file from there. The other way is you can write code that allows you to upload files yourself within the code. And so how that works is essentially I would come, well, I have my load section and I already have a code block here. So I can say from google.colab import files, and oops, I hit shift enter, I'm used to coding locally, and I can make a little prompt here. When I run this, I can say print upload a file, and you can see it's already auto completing, and I'll press enter again. Uploaded files are equal to files dot upload. So if I press play, it says upload a file, browse, no file selected. So I can hit browse, and then I can again search through my files and upload a file. Again, it's really preference as to how you want to do this. You can do it programmatically and then upload your file through there. You can also just upload the file into your session directly, whatever makes more sense. You can refresh files, so see which files are actually available. It's important to note that across sessions, sometimes Google will remove files. So you will upload a file to this session, and then you will close the screen out, come back into it, and your file's gone. That's because Google Colab utilizes a database cleanup, and I can go into that much deeper, but really all you need to know is that sometimes some files will be removed just to ensure adequate space and not clogging up the servers on Google's side. And so when you refresh it, you'll see what files are available in here for you to use. And if they're not in here anymore, you'll have to re-upload them. Sometimes that happens. You can mount a Google Drive. So if your data is within a Google Drive folder, you can mount that folder and then just start pulling data from there whenever you need it without having to upload into the session directly. That is something that I do highly recommend doing just because it will save you a lot of time. And you saw how messy my downloads folder was. It'll keep your downloads folder from being too messy like mine's is, and make it easier to pull data into Google Colab. One last thing I'll comment on is what I just did here. And I know I still owe you all a video on an intro to Python. That will be up next. But I imported a file, and you can see that I imported this file from the google.colab library. When you do something like this, you're importing functions from other libraries that already exist out there. And so in this case, I told Python to import from the Google Colab library and to give me the function files, basically so I can upload files within Google Colab. And so that helped me easily access the ability to upload files to Google Colab without having to come up here and press this button. So pretty neat how you can interact with it, and there's a couple of other ways and things that you can do to interact with Google Colab in that way as well. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. If you have questions about Google Colab, feel free to shoot me an email or leave a comment on the video itself, and I will respond to you when I can. Appreciate it.